All right, welcome everyone to another episode of O365A. In this episode, we have our friend Evan Zaleschuk, who is an AI business solutions architect with Microsoft. We did have Evan on with us quite a while back, so welcome back, Evan. Glad to have you with us. And today we're gonna basically just go through like a little level set about what frontier firms and agents are, and Evan can give us the lowdown.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks, Habib. Thanks, guys, for bringing me back. I guess last time I was here, I didn't say anything too offensive, so I'm glad that he asked me to come back. My role's changed a lot, Habib, as you mentioned, and I think previously we were talking a lot about Teams Phone, and all the excitement around Operator Connect, Teams Phone Mobile, and other modalities, and well, now everything is AI, copilot, agents, frontier firms, and everything else that's happening in the industry. And I think one of the things that I like to talk about is that we've all been in this industry for a long time. For me, it's been 30 some years. And it's interesting because if you look at all the things that we've lived through and I've lived through, things like Windows becoming an operating system, the graphical user interface, internet going online, Internet Explorer, web browsers, search, smartphones, SaaS, software as a service, and all those things that came to us changed the industry that we were a part of. But I think if you take all of that and you compress it into the 2 years that we've been working around AI, it's not even close to the impact that artificial intelligence is making, and it's not even close to how much it's accelerating and changing not only things that are happening in the business world, but our personal lives. So I think one of the things I like to talk about with organizations is, listen, as a company, respectfully, you don't know what you don't know about artificial intelligence. It's my full-time job, as it is for all of you, to try to stay on top of it. And it's hard. I spend a couple hours a day using an AI news aggregator to try to figure out what's happened in the last 24 hours and what's FUD, fear, uncertainty, and doubt, and what's really true. So for a lot of these companies, they're confused too. They need to focus on their core businesses. But we, as consultants and as Microsoft, don't know your business as well as you do. So this whole idea of frontier firms, and I really like it, but I think it's being misused. The term's being overused, and people don't understand what it is. They're saying we're sick of hearing about it, but I boldly will say that if you're sick of hearing about it, you're not hearing it from the right people, or you're not hearing the right narrative. It's a blueprint. You can drop the whole idea of frontier and frontier firm. It's a blueprint for your success for deploying and implementing artificial intelligence. So when we look at it from that fundamental perspective, one of the things that I like to see is people like yourselves working with these companies that want to adopt AI, adopt artificial intelligence. Because, as I mentioned, customers don't know what they don't know about artificial intelligence, but you as consultants or us as Microsoft don't know what we don't know about your company. So if we start from what Microsoft refers to as pattern one, phase one, the first step, we start working together synergistically. We learn about your business. You learn about artificial intelligence. And that first step is adoption of Copilot and how you learn how to use Copilot in your organization. And what I say is a horizontal approach where everybody gets to use it. It's making a difference in everybody's lives, and they're doing what they can do better and faster. That's really what it is. That's step one. So I think it's really helping people understand that, hey, let's work together because this is hard.
Yeah, and I think when organizations are looking at it from the personal productivity, like Copilot being that first, stepping stone into AI, like some organizations are expecting huge ROI right out of the gate. And it's like, well, personal productivity is probably not going to move the business, kind of processes and provide huge return on investment. That's really when you start getting into your operating procedures. And so I think there's also, kind of some of the confusion around agents and what are you seeing? And like, I think you were talking about like before this call is like, what is the definition of an agent?
Oh yeah, Michael, there's a lot to unpack there. And I think one of the things that you said, which always triggers how I talk about AI is how are people using it in their personal life as well. And I mean, a lot of us use it every day, and a lot of people are using it at home, and they expect their organizations to have it. And if they don't, um, well, we get that shadow AI concept, like we used to have shadow IT. People are going to bring tools to work, but when you talk about the definition of an agent, if we all wrote down right now what defined an agent, I can guarantee you we'd all have different answers. The larger the sampling size, the more different answers you're going to get. And I think I've seen very complex definitions from some analysts that I'm not smart enough to understand what they're saying. And one of the ones that I've kind of grasped more recently is an agent is a model or an LLM that uses tools to achieve an outcome. I love that. But so when people come to me and they say, I built an agent, look at this agent. And I'm like, well, show it to me. I'm like, that's not an agent. All that is a prompt. Maybe at best a scheduled prompt, but it's not really calling any tools. So I've kind of changed a little bit of how I approach this. And I like to challenge people when they say, I have an agent, or I've got this idea for an agent. Well, what makes it an agent? First of all, tell me what an agent is. And sometimes I'll just say, well, what tools is it using? And I think Anthropic's done a really interesting job in the way that they've come out with Anthropic or Claude skills and that whole concept. And I'm like, there's really something there. That's a way to think about it. So that's how I'm looking at this world. But I still don't see a lot of people creating an agent where I say, wow, that's really a game changer. Like, what is it? What problem are you solving? I sat down with a company about a month or two ago, and the CEO of the company doesn't have an executive assistant. And he asked their IT director if Copilot could do this. And he said, okay, here's an example. I need to drop my mother-in-law off at the airport next week on Tuesday. I want Copilot or an agent to first of all determine what my transit time is to the airport on that day at that specific time. And I want it to block that off in my calendar. And then I want it to block off the amount of time I have to be at the airport, depending on whether it's a domestic or international flight, to make sure my mother-in-law gets on that flight. And then also block off the time it takes me to get back to the office, because I can't take meetings, I can't do anything during that time. But not only that, so you're thinking, if I think about this, you have to call an agent that would give you transit times, book that off. It would take a look at flight information, book that off. Transit times on the way home. Great. So maybe it can do that. But here's where it gets really interesting. What if there's a delay of the flight? What if flight information changes? What are we going to do then? So that's really solving a pain point for an executive. That to me that's a really good example of an agent. Does anything like that exist? I haven't found anything. And we take a look at that whole idea of being able to travel and use an agent for traveling. What if I want to go on a vacation with my wife sometime next month? Don't know where I want to go, but these are the conditions. So I want to go to a place that's sunny, has a beach, no kids, sorry. My wife and I have children. I want to fly on certain airlines at certain times of the day. I want to sit in a certain area of the airport, or sorry, a certain area of the airplane. I don't want to fly at these times. I want to stay in this type of hotel. I want this type of a rental, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Go figure it out for me. So it books it all for me after it comes back and gives me some options. But what happens if something changes? This is where I look at it from a personal perspective or from an executive perspective. I'm like, those are pretty good agents. But when we take a look at the data and what the analysts are saying as well, Michael, you brought up ROI. Where do we get our best ROI when we create agents? If you can't measure those ROIs, well, how valuable is it going to be to that organization? How are you going to get that organization to continue to invest? You won't, because you can't answer that question. So the other thing is we need to be able to articulate that. And I know that some of the tools that Microsoft has, the admin centers, we're starting to be able to do that. And I've heard rumor at Ignite, pay attention to what's happening at Ignite, because there's going to be more things announced in that area.
I was going to say that's really interesting. I mean, I'm using Copilot every day and leaning into some form of AI, and this notion of having it do something, and even Copilot will say, well, would you like me to keep track of something? And I know it can't really do that, but it offers it. But that's really the next evolution, right? Like, I've done all this work, but now I want you to look for changes, like you were mentioning. So that's really interesting. So I guess my question is, how do firms or customers evaluate whether they're ready for this or whether they're still in a proof of concept stage? Like, that's like, how do they know? Like, what's the litmus test for this?
That's a good question, Dino. And I've read about the organizations that are in a wait and see approach. And I think that's really dangerous. The reason being is that if organizations are going to wait and see and adopt AI, have you heard about the AI unicorns? These organizations that didn't exist very long ago, less than 100 employees, they have billion-dollar valuations, and the stuff they're doing is amazing. The reason they're so successful is because they built their organization with AI at the core. So organizations that are at a wait and see approach, there's a big risk for them. And I don't think they're all realizing this. So if you have an organization that's a startup and they've got 10 people and they've built their entire company around artificial intelligence, they've adopted it and they've been using it, but they built the foundation on it. Their org chart has artificial intelligence embedded in it, and they built that org chart to accept that fact. What they can do with 10 people is so remarkable that they can outperform 100 or a 500 user company because they have the ability to do it using artificial intelligence. So not only do they know how to use it, but maybe they've also found the solutions that they need utilizing artificial intelligence. So I think that the litmus test is you just got to start looking at it. You got to understand how can it affect you and your organization. And I talk about the approach, whether it resonates with people or not, but the horizontal approach. Like when I sit and talk to a room of people, I don't necessarily know if those are executives in there, if they're frontline workers, if it's finance, sales, whomever it is. But when I talk about artificial intelligence, I talk about Copilot, how can I give them examples that's relevant to everybody? And I know it's a very fundamental and basic example, but I ask the audience, how many people like taking 2 weeks vacation? Put up your hand. You guys like taking vacation? Well, you're all contractors. I don't know if you even get vacation, but it's hypothetically play along.
Michael's not allowed outside.
Yeah. But if you can take vacation and you go away for 2 weeks, everybody's excited. How many people are excited to come back Monday morning? Put up your hand. Not a lot of hands go up. I've had one hand go up in the room once, and it was a new person out of school, freshly starting in a new role at the new company, and they were excited. And they even admitted, they said, I'm excited to get back to work. I'm like, how long have you been working here? Oh, just a week. I'm like, okay, we can't, you're not old enough yet. No offense. But the idea there is that it's hard coming back to work. And even for me, coming back to work at Microsoft after 2 weeks, I could have 800-900 email, chat messages, channel messages. I've missed a bunch of meetings, and it could take me 2 weeks to catch up, or it could take me days to catch up. But now, Monday morning, I have a prompt, not an agent, a prompt that I schedule or run, and it catches me up on emails, channel messages, chat messages, meeting recaps, file updates. Not only does it do all that, but it also says, here's what the high priority items are. Here's things that have been responded to. Maybe you just want to be aware of, but here's how you could respond to some of those people that are waiting for a response from you or haven't been responded to. Oh, and here's some documents that you may want to reference or include. So now I can catch up. Instead of it being weeks, it could be days, hours. But for me, before I finish my coffee. So that whole concept, when I presented to a room, there was about 300 people in the room. The VP in the room stood up at the back and said, I need to know how to do that. And I'm like, well, it starts with Microsoft 365 Copilot. So that it becomes this thing that everybody uses, and there becomes that broad adoption. It's hard to measure that ROI, but when you see people and they're happy and they're talking about being productive, I think eventually if you're good at it, you'll be able to measure that ROI because more productivity, people doing things that are more exciting. But then it's maybe the vertical approach. What I mean by that is, well, who do you focus on next? This is why I say with that first pattern, step one, you need to have people that understand AI involved in helping you adopt, because now they're going to look at you and they're going to say, okay, for the executives, maybe we're going to go help them next. They're the ones that make the biggest business decisions that have the most financial impact. And if we can make them more productive and give them a few minutes back every day, or having them do things that they already do but better and faster, let's do that. Maybe it's the sales organization. Sales is generating revenue for your company. So if we can help them, and now that Microsoft has embedded Copilot for sales and finance into M365 Copilot, it improves that story. Maybe it's HR, maybe it's customer support. So we get into that vertical piece. That's where we can start looking at first-party agents as well. And the analysts have all said, buy, don't build. Well, if you already own M365 Copilot, you have first-party agents. Learn how to use them. It's interesting. I met with an organization once, and they said, oh, it was IT, 15 people in IT. And they're like, we need to build this agent. We need these agents. And I'm like, okay, what doesn't Microsoft first-party agents do for you, like researcher and analyst? What? They hadn't used them yet. So I showed them how these first-party agents work. And they said, hey, we don't need to build agents. I said, no, you may need to build agents, just not yet. So utilize them, and then that'll help you go through that first pattern, the second pattern, and the third pattern. The third pattern, and this is where it's so important to have smart people like you involved working alongside the organizations, because that third pattern, that third phase is, how do you reimagine your business processes? So that organization that built themselves on AI didn't have to reimagine business processes. They just imagined what they could do with AI. Whereas an existing organization needs to reimagine how they're going to work. So getting back to what you said, Dino, that's where really we need to get to. It's hard to get there because I think going back to how we started the conversation, we're talking about adoption of AI. We're talking about frontier firms. We're talking about agents. We're talking about all the news that keeps coming out that creates a lot of fear, uncertainty, and doubt that our customers are seeing and reading. But it's like we're saying, hey, we want to put you behind the wheel of a Formula One car and send you off into this race. But most of the people are sitting here riding around on tricycles or bicycles with their training wheels. They don't even have a driver's license yet. And this chasm between the two is getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And I'm not saying they're not people that are racing in Formula One races, but most of the people I talk to are here. They might not even know that they're here. We all need to do a better job of bringing those people to this point. But we got a long way to go. And that's how I see it. And that's how I spend a lot of my time. Sure, I'd love to help people build agents and make a lot of money, but we're not there yet. We're getting there. And we do have those organizations that are frontier because they've gotten to that point. Or we have those unicorns that they started as frontier. But we don't have to call it frontier. It's a blueprint to be successful.
Yeah, I think that's sort of what I'm seeing too. Like I see a lot more of the adoption side of things happening now in just the standard Copilot for Microsoft 365.
Mm-hmm.
People are still like, well, okay, yeah, we want to look at agents, but we're still not 100% yet on this whole Copilot adoption side of things too, especially because of the mess with regards to information management and oversharing and stuff like that. Like those projects just take forever, right? Just to be able to figure out what do we have, what are we sharing, how do we restrict and clean up all that data before the customer is thinking about like, hey, what can we do with an agent and automate it and stuff like that, right? To have like a, some sort of interactive, what I call Power Automate, right? Like it's a flow in the back end kind of thing, right? So that's kind of where I see sort of the lay of the land that's happening now, right? Is that they're still in this adoption stage, like they're trying to and doing a data cleanup stage before we can even start. I mean, some of them are dipping their toe in, like, what are agents, how can we do some certain things like you mentioned before, but I think we're still sort of at the beginning. And Microsoft is like way ahead and trying to get everybody kind of over to this area, which, like, we're trying, right? We're trying to get there, but yeah, it's just not there yet. Yeah.
Well, and oh, sorry, go ahead, Michael.
I was going to say this. I think this goes back to your like the concern on the wait and see for organizations, right? So, like, what you were mentioning is like a lot of organizations have technology debt, right? Like they aren't starting fresh into the industry and could be the unicorn that's all AI and cloud first. They have, maybe they turned off Delve and they didn't want to go through their data and deal with governance and security and all that. And now it's biting them because they need to think about that. And so the wait and see is a risk because it just kicks that can further down the line.
Yeah, it's everything. It's like on-prem AD, all the data that's from there that's synchronized, that now it has access to, right? And then, like, terabytes and terabytes of data in SharePoint, right? That people just go and dump stuff and never go back and clean up, and they share it and stuff like that, right? So, like, there's these massive, projects that are happening with regards to just cleaning up our environment, right? And then, kind of being at like a good place data wise, right? In order to be able to continue on the path of whatever else is coming in the AI realm.
Well, and I think this is a really interesting topic too, because as part of that wait and see approach, and Michael, you mentioned about organizations, maybe somebody shut off Delve, but they haven't cleaned up their data, or they haven't been concerned with any of the compliance and security boundaries around it. But the thing that people need to understand is these bad actors, these malicious actors, have new attack vectors as well, because they're leveraging AI. And the pace that and the rate at which they can do this is astronomical. So there's also that side of the equation. Like, if you're going to sit and wait and you're not going to address your security within your organization because it hasn't been a problem, it's going to be a problem for you very soon, and a lot sooner than it would have before. I mean, Microsoft has done a lot in this area. The copilot safety system is a layer that Microsoft has incorporated that does a lot of different things. And one of the pillars of that is compliance and security with Purview and Defender, and helping address some of these new attack vectors that the bad actors are coming with. There's other things like the meta prompt that's behind the prompt, because it's been 2 years I've been working with people trying to help them learn how to prompt more effectively, and they still need to know how to prompt effectively. But Microsoft has a meta prompt that actually improves the prompt that you write in Copilot to give you a better response. And the reason that's so important too is because when we use natural language to create agents, if you bring your bad prompting into creating agents, you're just going to make a bigger mess. So there's a whole conversation around that one pillar when it comes to compliance and security, to make sure your posture is secure, even if you're not adopting AI and Copilot yet, although I hope you would reconsider that. Address this piece, and not only address it now, but continually. Because as we create content and as we bring in more applications and data into our environments, it's going to continually need to be monitored. So who's doing that for you? Are you even aware as an organization that what's happening? We talked about shadow AI before. We're talking about, shadow IT, now shadow AI potentially. It just exasperates that risk.
100%. I mean, I think the security side of things is just as important, if not as important or more, right, than the adoption side, right? I mean, just to, if you want to put it on a scale, right, just because of the fact that, you don't want to have your users using tools that are not, sanctioned in the Defender terms and stuff like that, or the bad actors, sending in malicious stuff that you guys might be using so that they can have like prompt injections and stuff like that, right? It's more about controlling and securing your environment, as opposed to, I know, like the other projects are like Yeah, we want people to adopt it. We want them to use it. We want them to enhance their, their daily life, and also from a business perspective and stuff like that. But we also can't do that if we're unsecure. So it's like, when we talk with people on the security side, and I develop a lot of the security controls for some agencies, but it's interesting, when we talk, it's like, security is not like a one and done, right? It's a continual kind of a thing, right? You always got to be up to date and try to be ahead of, the bad actors and stuff like that. So it's definitely interesting and challenging all at the same time.
It is, and there's another thing to consider too when it comes to the adoption. And we mentioned it earlier, like people are using these tools in their personal life. I think the data says something like over 70% of the general population is using some form of artificial intelligence in their personal life. So we think about those two organizations, one's adopted AI, the other one's wait and see. Well, what are the employees going to end up doing? How are you going to hire someone in the two organizations that are similar in every fashion? One has AI, one doesn't, and you're recruiting talent. Where's the talent going to go? The talent that's used to using AI is going to go to the company that's already adopting it. And even at a bigger risk are the people that are saying, I'm at this company, there's no AI here, and I can be more productive over here because this company's embraced it. We also need to consider those facts.
Yeah,
And I'm not
100%.
saying, I'm not a salesperson, right? I'm just sitting here looking at the data, not just Microsoft's data. I'm looking at data from McKinsey and Forrester and Gartner and MIT Technology Review. Shout out to all of them. They're the ones that are doing the research and coming back and saying, here's what we found. We need to listen as
Yep.
organizations.
Yeah, I think you touched on a really good point. I did a bunch of workshops last year on Copilot and stuff like that, and the cost and how all this other stuff. And there was a lot of executives are like talking about the ROI, and I was like, well, like you said, you can't really you can kind of try. There's a Excel sheet that Microsoft provides and stuff like that, which is pretty good for like you get the average employee, and here's how much whatever like meetings that they're in, et cetera, kind of thing. But the one comment that I told back to them, I said, it's hard to put an ROI on employee satisfaction.
Yes.
Whereas, right, where, you're giving them a tool that maybe will make their day much faster. As you mentioned, right, like you can go away for 2 weeks and come back and get up to speed right away, right? I mean, for me, I use it daily to bring me information as opposed to me going out and searching online and trying all these different tabs and all these different sites and stuff like that to try and find me the information. So I use it constantly just for that. And from an employee satisfaction perspective, I mean, that's huge to me because I have less time to try and go and do the research when the research is coming to me, right? And now you're talking about all these, first party built-in agents and stuff like that that Microsoft is providing too. I mean, that to me is like powerful for an employer to provide their employee and them being like, hey, wow, like I can get stuff, faster. It may not improve my efficiency, but at least I have the information faster to me, right?
Yeah, and one of the things that I've done with Copilot, and even the personal edition, Copilot Chat, I was experimenting with this because I saw that it can create a podcast for you now. This was a while ago, but so every morning what I have it do is I say, create a podcast for me at 6 o'clock in the morning, gathering all the AI news over the last 24 hours. And it does that, and it alerts me every morning and my notifications on my Android phone that it's ready. It's about a 7-minute podcast with two people talking about what's going on in the AI world. And while I'm walking my dog, I'm listening to it. So I'm digesting this data in a way that I never could before. I mean, I know Notebook LM does something similar where I can actually interject into it and ask it questions so I can be like a participant in the podcast. And I'm sure Microsoft will get there as well. But, these are the things that we need to learn and adopt as organizations. How do you put a value on that? I mean, it's hard. But a story that someone told me, one of the sellers for one of the partners that I work with, sold M365 Copilot into a one-person company. And this is at a time, I don't know, 6-7 months ago, everybody was saying, it's too expensive. And I got the person to get up and tell this story. So this one-person company, dog groomer or grooms animals, has a storefront, one person. And they adopted using M365 Copilot to create an online social media campaign. So they built it in M365 Copilot, moved it over to Canva. So it's not a Microsoft product. That's fine. It's free. And built this social media advertisement that they put out on Facebook and Instagram and a few other locations. And they were inundated with new clients that wanted to bring their animals to this person to get groomed. And so, I had some people ask me, well, why couldn't they just do that with a free version of ChatGPT or Copilot Chat? Well, they could the first time, but the second time, maybe they wanted to iterate on the first marketing campaign they did, or maybe they wanted to use the corporate branding that they've already developed or paid for. You can't do that with free versions of the software. So at the time, they said, well, this is why we're using it. And I think what was really interesting is this person that was telling the story, I asked her, I said, how much does it cost to get your dog groomed? About $100. I'm like, okay. So you've almost paid for one new customer being acquired, getting their dog groomed once. You've paid for Copilot for 2.5 to 3 months of usage. And so the person that had this organization, this company, they said, I've only used it for that so far, but and we followed up with them, and they're using it for all sorts of things. So this one person company is acting like a multi-person company because they have artificial intelligence and they've learned how to adopt it for their business. So they've reimagined their business processes for AI. Those are the things that, how do you put an ROI on that? Well, it's just in the joy this person has that they said, I couldn't pay for a social media consultant to do this work for me for $40 a month or $30 a month. It'd be hundreds of dollars a month. So it's really interesting. Yes, there are ROI calculators, and it's hard in some of the larger organizations to put value on those things. It takes work. But I love these stories. I really think it's the stories that really get people thinking and say, I need that. And when I've written prompts that do some pretty amazing things, and I shared them with my colleagues, and they're like, I need this. Thank you. Well, and I'll tell you a secret. Use a prompt to write a prompt. I mean, it's so simple, right? I mentioned to people before, or I mentioned before that people have never been very good at writing prompts. Maybe you won't have to be for long, but ask Copilot to create a prompt for you and then use it in a new chat. It's really cool what it'll do. Or there's nothing wrong with using another model and say, hey, model, create a prompt for me for this. I did that this morning in Nano Banana. I had Copilot create me a prompt and I fired it in Nano Banana to create an image. It was really easy that way. And then I can iterate on it from there. Or some of the other things I do is sometimes the results that I get, I move them from one chat to another chat because we always have to check our work. AI makes mistakes. It's a great way to check your work. So there's all these things that we can do that we use, and I share these stories with people, and they're like, "Oh yeah, okay." So am I calculating ROI for them? No, but they're seeing it.
Yeah, for sure.
You can do it.
No, I mean, awesome. I mean, I definitely enjoy this conversation. A lot of really good information and hearing some of the really great stories that you're mentioning as well too. I think we'll just leave it there. But thanks, Evan, for coming on and sharing all this stuff with us in your journey with all your different clients and stuff like that. It's definitely interesting to listen to, and hopefully, maybe down the road we'll have you on again to see if people are on the agent side of things now, and moving forward with their adoption strategies quicker.
Well, and I'm sure we will see them sooner than later. We just need to get over that learning curve and acceptance of what it can do, because I think that's one of the things. People just don't understand what we can do with it yet. Even, and I'll close with this. And one of the things that I saw from one of the social media people that I follow, I think they work for HubSpot, and he learned something from his son. his son is younger and has been using AI, and the way that he talks to artificial intelligence, as adults, we tend to ask AI, give me an answer to this. And what his son does is, well, and I think the way that I'll say this is when my brother and I were young, one of the things that he always used to ask my father was a question, what's the matter if? He was young. He meant, what would happen if this? So being that creative as a child, we need to look at using AI the same way that a child would, being inquisitive and asking questions. Instead of just asking it for an answer, ask it a what if scenario. And I think if we start doing that, it's going to change the way we use this technology. And we're all going to look at it much differently the next time we get a chance to talk.
Sounds good. I'll start trying that myself.
We all should. We'll compare notes.
Yeah, exactly.
All right.
All right. Thanks, everyone, for listening in to this great conversation, and we'll see you on our next episode.
Thanks, guys.